Just sign here, Mom. It's only paperwork. It'll make everything easier when the time comes. I signed. Of course I did. That's what you do when your daughter slides a document across the kitchen table. Your kitchen table in your house, with a pen already uncapped and a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. The date on that paper was October 14th. I remember because it was the same day I turned 72 and nobody had mentioned it yet by noon. I'd lived in that house for 31 years. My husband Dale and I bought it the spring our son started kindergarten. We painted the dining room the wrong shade of yellow twice before getting it right. Dale built the back deck himself over 3 weekends, cursing softly at the wood screws while I brought him iced tea. When he died 6 years ago now, I stayed. People assumed I'd sell. I didn't. Every creak of the floorboards at night was still him somehow. I wasn't ready to trade that in. My daughter Sylvia moved in 2 years after Dale passed. Her husband Craig. No, I won't be calling him that. My son-in-law had lost his job, and they were drowning in rent on the other side of Raleigh. She called me crying on a Tuesday. I said, "Come." I meant it. That's the thing people don't understand when this kind of story gets told. There's no villain at the beginning. There's just a mother who loves her daughter, and a spare bedroom, and a willingness to help that gets mistaken, over time, for permission. Within 6 months, my guest room became their room. Within a year, the refrigerator held mostly their food. My Sunday routines got rearranged around their schedules. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself this was what family did. I told myself a lot of things in that house. The paperwork Sylvia put in front of me that October was a durable power of attorney. She explained it carefully, the way you explain something to someone who might not understand. She said it was standard, said it was something every senior should have in place. Said Dale would have wanted me protected. She used his name like a key she'd found and knew exactly which lock it fit. I signed. I found out about Meadow Glen on a Wednesday in February, 3.5 months later. I wasn't supposed to find out the way I did. I came downstairs early, couldn't sleep, and my son-in-law had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. The screen hadn't gone dark yet. I wasn't snooping. I was reaching for the coffee filters in the cabinet above it, and I saw my name in the subject line of an email. Read, admission deposit, Eleanor Marsh, Meadow Glen Senior Living, Carrie NC. I stood there in my robe, in my kitchen, reading an email confirming the deposit had been received and that my move-in date was set for March 8th. It was February 19th. 17 days. I didn't make a sound. I put the coffee filters back. I went upstairs. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked out the window at the yard Dale had planted azaleas in, and I thought, very clearly and very quietly, no. Not the screaming kind of no. Not the kind you say out loud. The kind that settles into your spine and stays there. The kind that reorganizes everything. I didn't say a word to Sylvia that morning. Or the next. I smiled at breakfast. I watched the news with my son-in-law in the evenings. I folded laundry. I was the same woman they'd grown comfortable not really seeing. But I was also on the phone with an attorney named James Whitfield by Thursday afternoon. James had an office on Glenwood Avenue with a waiting room that smelled like old carpet and good coffee. His assistant, a stout woman with reading glasses on a beaded chain, offered me a seat and didn't ask why I was there with a folder of documents I'd spent 2 nights quietly copying from the filing cabinet I still had a key to. James reviewed everything without rushing. He was in his late 50s, plain-spoken, the kind of man who didn't waste words on cushioning. The power of attorney is valid, he said, but it hasn't been used to transfer title. The house is still yours. Your bank accounts are still yours. Nothing has moved yet. Yet, I said. He nodded once. We can revoke the POA today. You're cognitively sound. You're not under conservatorship. And there's no legal reason you can't rescind it. I'll draw up the paperwork now if you want. I said yes before he finished the sentence. While he had his assistant prepare the documents, I sat in that chair and felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. The particular sensation of being the person in charge of what happens next. I signed 4 pages that afternoon. Entirely different feeling from the kitchen table in October. I had a plan by the time I drove home. I had a checking account at a credit union across town that Sylvia didn't know existed. Dale and I had opened it years ago as our travel fund. We'd only used it once, for a trip to Savannah that turned out to be our last vacation together. After he died, I never closed it. There was $4,200 in it, untouched. Over the next 10 days, I moved carefully. I transferred a portion of my savings to that account. Not everything, that would have raised flags, just enough. I called my doctor and had my prescriptions forwarded to a pharmacy in a different zip code. I quietly packed what mattered: my medications, Dale's watch, the photo albums, my mother's recipe box, 3 changes of clothes, and the deed to the house in a manila envelope at the bottom of my tote bag. I also called my grandson. Theo was 23, working at a bicycle repair shop in Asheville, living with 2 roommates in a place that probably had more posters than furniture. He called me every Sunday without fail, not because he was told to, just because he did. When I called him on a Wednesday, he picked up on the second ring. "Grandma, everything okay?" "Yes," I said. "I need to tell you something, and I need you not to call your mother until I say so." A pause. Then, "Okay." I told him enough. Not everything, just enough. He was quiet while I talked. When I finished, he said, "Where are you going to go?" "I have somewhere in mind. Do you need money?" "No, sweetheart. I need you to know I'm safe and that I'm doing this on purpose." Another pause. "Okay," he said again, softer this time. "Call me when you get there." March 4th was a Sunday, 4 days before my scheduled move-in at Meadow Glen. Sylvia and my son-in-law left after breakfast to visit friends in Durham. They'd be back by dinner. My grandson was in Asheville. The house was mine, quietly, the way it used to be. I finished packing in 40 minutes, carried my things to the car in 2 trips, left the house key on the kitchen counter, my extra set, not my original, because the original was mine and had always been mine and I was keeping it. I left no note. I drove north on 540, then merged west toward the mountains without a fixed destination, which was terrifying and also the freest I had felt in 2 years. I ended up in a town called Boone, North Carolina, a little after 2 in the afternoon. I'd been there once with Dale, years ago, for a fall foliage weekend. I remembered it as a place that took itself seriously in a modest way. Good coffee, independent bookstores, people who nodded at you on the sidewalk. I found a motel on King Street, nothing fancy, $68 a night. Clean enough. The man at the front desk didn't ask questions. I paid cash, took my key, and carried my bag up to the second floor. Room 14. Twin bed, a window that faced the parking lot, a heater that hummed like it was thinking. I sat on the edge of the bed and called Theo. "I'm in Boone," I said. "Boone," he repeated. "Okay. You're okay?" "I'm okay." "Good." A beat. "Grandma, for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." I didn't answer immediately. I was looking at the parking lot, at the ordinary Tuesday afternoon of strangers moving through their lives, and I was thinking about how strange it was that the right thing and the terrifying thing could be exactly the same action. "Get some rest," he said. I did. The next morning I walked into town. Boone in early March was cold and gray and not interested in performing cheerfulness for anyone. I appreciated that. There's something honest about a mountain town in early spring before the tourists arrive. It shows you what it actually is. I found a coffee shop on Howard Street called Grounds and Grace, which I took as a small sign from nobody in particular. I ordered a black coffee and a blueberry muffin and sat at a corner table by the window. A woman about my age was at the next table doing a crossword with a pencil. She had the eraser end tucked between her lips the way people do when they're thinking. Her coat was the kind of sensible wool you buy because it will last, not because it's pretty. After a while, she looked up and said, without preamble, "You new here? Is it that obvious? You're looking at everything like you're filing it away. Locals already know where everything is." She tapped her pencil on the table. "Irene," she said. "June," I said. She nodded. "You staying long?" "I don't know yet." She seemed to find this acceptable. The rental market's not terrible if you're not in a hurry. There's a bulletin board at the community center on Faculty Street. People post rooms before they put them online. Then she went back to her crossword. Just like that, no follow-up questions. I went to the community center that afternoon. The room was in a house on Depot Street, a narrow blue craftsman with a porch that tilted slightly to the left and wind chimes made from old silverware. The woman who owned it was named Carolyn. 68, retired county clerk, walked with a cane she decorated with a strip of orange reflective tape so she wouldn't trip on it in the dark. She showed me the room without ceremony. It was small. A full bed, a nightstand with a lamp, a window that looked out at a bare dogwood. And it was $500 a month, utilities included, shared kitchen and bath, no smoking inside, no drama. I had a woman rent this room for 4 years, Carolyn said. She moved to be near her sister in Flagstaff. I've been eating dinner alone for 3 months and I'm tired of it. I don't need a friend, I need a person. I understand that, I said. You have a dog? No. Good, I'm allergic. She looked at me steadily. You running from something? I thought about it. More like walking away from something, at a reasonable pace. She considered this. That'll do. She handed me the key. Sylvia called 47 times in the first 2 days. I know because I turned my phone on briefly on the second evening to check and saw the number before I turned it back off. There were voicemails. I could see the transcripts and the notification previews. The first few were worried, then they became something else. Mom, this is not okay. You need to call us. You have a room at Meadow Glen. We made arrangements. As if the arrangements for my life were a logistical matter she'd handled on my behalf and I had failed to show up for. My son-in-law left one message, short. He said I was being dramatic and that this was going to upset everyone for nothing. I didn't respond to any of them. What I did instead, I asked Carolyn if she knew of any part-time work in town, something that would get me out of the house and moving. She mentioned that the front desk at the county library auxiliary bookshop was understaffed. They paid minimum wage and kept morning hours, 9 to 1. I walked in on Thursday. The woman running it was named Betty, 64, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, sorting donations with the focused energy of someone who'd been doing it for years. Experience? She asked. I was an office manager for 18 years. Before that, I raised 2 children, kept the household accounts, and organized every school fundraiser at Jefferson Elementary for a decade. Betty looked up from the book in her hands. Can you alphabetize? In my sleep. You're hired, Monday through Friday, 9 to 1. Coffee's in the back. Don't move my system. I settled into Boone the way water finds its level, gradually, without fanfare. Mornings at the bookshop with Betty. Afternoons walking, first, just the blocks around Carolyn's, then further as my legs remembered what they were for. Evenings on the porch with Carolyn wrapped in a quilt, talking or not talking, depending on the day. Carolyn was not a warm person in the conventional sense. She didn't ask how I was feeling or offer platitudes, but she made a full pot of coffee every morning and left me a mug beside the machine with my name on a piece of tape. She left the crossword on the kitchen table with the easy clues filled in. She said, when I'd been there 2 weeks, you can have friends over, you know, if you ever have any, and that was the closest she came to saying she'd noticed I seemed a little alone. I was a little alone, but alone had started to feel different from lonely. Betty and I fell into a rhythm at the bookshop. She wasn't effusive, but she was fair, and she had a dry wit that surfaced when you weren't expecting it. After 2 weeks, she started setting aside books she thought I'd like. A memoir about a woman who walked the Appalachian Trail at 60, a collection of Marilyn Robinson, a dog-eared Nora Ephron. You seem like someone who appreciates a good sentence, she said one morning, sliding a book across the counter. My husband used to say the same thing. She didn't ask about him, just nodded. I appreciated that too. On a Tuesday morning in week 3, Theo called. I think Mom knows where you are, he said. How? She went through some old emails. You mentioned Boone to me once a while back, apparently. I didn't give her anything, I swear. She remembered. It's all right, she remembered. It's all right, I said. You okay? Yes. And I meant it. She's really upset, Grandma. I know. Do you think you'll ever— I don't know yet, Theo, but I know I'm not going back to what it was. He was quiet for a moment. Yeah, he said finally. I get that. Sylvia arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I was at the bookshop when Betty glanced up and said, "There's a woman outside reading the hours sign," like it insulted her. I didn't need to look. Dark coat? Good shoes? Very good shoes. That's my daughter. Betty set down the book she was holding. You want me to go out there? No. I untied my apron. I'll go. I met Sylvia on the sidewalk. She looked tired in the way people look when they've been managing their worry into anger for several days, and the anger is starting to show through. Her eyes were red at the corners. Her coat was expensive and slightly wrinkled. Mom, she said. Sylvia, you left. Yes. Do you have any idea? She stopped. Started again. We had everything arranged. The room at Meadow Glen is lovely. You would have your own bathroom. There are activities. There are. Did you ask me? She blinked. What? Before you put down the deposit. Before you contacted the facility. Before you signed me up for activities I didn't choose. Did you ask me what I wanted? She opened her mouth. Closed it. You signed me up for a room in a building I'd never visited, I said, and I kept my voice steady. In a facility selected without my input, on a timeline you chose using a legal authority I gave you in good faith, and you did it without mentioning it to me once. Not once, Sylvia. We thought. I know what you thought. You thought I was getting older and it would be easier. Maybe for you. Maybe that's even true. But I am 72 years old. I buried my husband. I kept a house for 30 years. I raised you. I'm not a problem to be managed. She was crying. Quietly, the way she used to cry as a child, holding very still like she could keep it from being real if she didn't move. I wasn't trying to get rid of you, she said. I was trying to get rid of you, she said. I was trying to take care of me. I said it gently. I know, but there's a difference between taking care of someone and taking over. We stood on the sidewalk in the cold for a long moment. Your father's house, she said finally, her voice smaller. I grew up there, I know, and it's still there. Nothing has changed about that. But it's my house, Sylvia. And what happens in it and what happens to me is my decision. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So what now? Now you go home. You let me have this, and maybe, in time, you call me the way Theo does, just to talk. She looked at me for a long moment. Something moved behind her eyes. I don't know if it was understanding exactly or just the beginning of it. The power of attorney, she said, revoked. 3 weeks ago. She exhaled slowly. I didn't know you could do that. Neither did I, at first. She didn't stay. She hugged me briefly and stiffly the way we've been hugging for years now. Two people who loved each other imprecisely. But she held on a moment longer than usual before she stepped back. She left without fighting me. I don't know if that was respect or exhaustion, but I'll take it. I went back inside. Betty was reorganizing the biography shelf with her back to me. Everything all right? She asked, without turning around. Getting there, I said. She handed me a stack of books to shelve. I got to work. That evening I called Theo, told him his mother had come and gone. He was quiet for a moment, then asked, "How'd it go?" "It went," I said. He laughed softly. "That's fair." He told me he'd been saving a little money. Said he was thinking about coming to Boone in the spring to see the mountains. Said he'd heard there was good hiking and better pie. The pie is excellent, I confirmed. Cool. A pause. I'm really proud of you, Grandma. Is that weird to say? No, I said. It's exactly right. April came slowly in Boone, which is to say it snowed twice more before the dogwood outside my window finally bloomed. By then, I'd been at the bookshop long enough that Betty trusted me with the register and the end-of-day count. By then, Carolyn and I had developed a Wednesday night routine involving frozen lasagna and a British mystery series we were both pretending wasn't our favorite show we'd ever seen. I bought myself a new coat, charcoal gray wool cashmere blend, clearance rack at the consignment shop on King Street. I tried it on in a too small dressing room and looked at myself in the mirror for a full minute. Not the woman from the kitchen table in October, pen in hand, smiling at an uncapped pen. Someone else. Someone who had driven away from her own house on a Sunday morning with a tote bag and a destination she made up as she went, and had somehow landed here, in this coat, in this town, with a key in her pocket and a job and a Wednesday night ritual and a grandson who called every week without being asked. I bought the coat. Theo did come in May. He arrived on a Friday with a backpack and a friend from the bike shop, a quiet young man named Patrick, though I suppose I cannot use that name. A quiet young man whose name I won't set down here, who shook my hand and called me ma'am in the way that means it. We went hiking Saturday morning, the three of us, on a trail Carolyn had mapped out on a paper she left on the kitchen table with a note that said, "Don't fall down anything." My hip complained on the uphill. I told it to hush and kept going. At the top, Theo stood beside me, looking out over the ridge, the mountains folded and blue in every direction, and he said, very simply, "I'm glad you're here." I didn't trust my voice right away, so I just stood there with him, looking. After a while I said, "Me too. Some mornings I still wake up thinking I'm in my house in Raleigh. I hear the particular quiet of a house that holds more than just yourself, the distant sounds of another person living, and for a half second I'm back in the life that was disappearing around me while I wasn't watching." Then the dogwood comes into focus through the window. The silverware wind chimes sound on the porch. The coffee maker in Carolyn's kitchen coughs and starts. And I know where I am. I got a letter from Sylvia in late April. 2 pages, handwritten, which surprised me. She said she'd been in therapy, her word, and that she was starting to understand how some of her choices had been about her own anxiety and less about what I actually needed. She didn't ask me to come home. She didn't ask for anything. She just said she was sorry and that she missed me, and that she hoped the room in Boone was enough for now. I read it twice. Then I put it in the drawer of my nightstand, where I keep the things worth keeping. I haven't written back yet. I will, just not on her timeline. On mine. Betty promoted me, if you can call it that, to opening the shop solo on Mondays when she has her early physical therapy appointment. She leaves a handwritten list of what needs doing and a thermos of coffee on the counter. I work through the list, then do whatever seems necessary after that. Last Monday, I reorganized the local interest section by geography instead of author name, because it made more sense that way. She came in at 10:30, looked at the shelf, didn't say a word for a long moment. Then, "That's better. High praise. There's a man named, I'll call him Harold, who comes in every Tuesday and Thursday and stays for an hour. Retired professor of something, 69, the kind of deliberate reader who holds the book with both hands. We don't talk much, but he always nods when he comes in, and last week he left a handwritten note on the counter that said, 'The Marilyn Robinson you recommended was worth every page.' I'd recommended it in passing 3 weeks earlier. He'd remembered. I stuck the note to the cabinet above the register with a piece of tape. Some things you keep for yourself. There's a thing I've been thinking about, sitting on Carolyn's porch in the evenings watching the light go out of the mountains. I spent a long time being what the situation required. That's not all bad. There's love in it, real love, the kind that says your needs matter more than my comfort right now. I don't regret the years I gave to the people I gave them to. I regret that I gave so much of it away that I started to think there was nothing left that was only mine. Turns out there was. Turns out there still is. I'm 72 years old. I work part-time in a used bookshop in a mountain town I barely remembered existed. I live in a rented room with a tilting porch and a cane with orange tape on it leaning by the front door. I have a grandson who calls on Sundays and a daughter who is, maybe, slowly learning to see me. I have a coat that fits like it was waiting. I have time that belongs to me. I have the particular knowledge that I can leave a room where I am not valued and find a different room, and that the finding is hard and the leaving is hard, and I did both anyway, and I am still here. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's mine. If this found you at the right moment, if you're sitting in a kitchen watching someone else plan your life, I want you to know that the paperwork can be revoked. Not just the legal kind, all of it. You don't need a destination, you only need a decision. Come back and tell me when you make it. I'll be here on a Tuesday morning, alphabetizing something, with a cup of coffee and a door that opens when you knock. I've thought a lot about that pen. The one Sylvia left uncapped on my kitchen table, already aimed at the signature line, like the decision had been made before I sat down. I signed because I trusted her. And that trust wasn't foolish. It was real. But I've learned that love and good intentions can still carry you somewhere you never agreed to go if you're not paying attention. What happened to me wasn't cruelty in the storybook sense. Sylvia didn't hate me. She was scared, and scared people make plans for other people without asking, because asking feels like it might slow things down. That's the thing about cause and effect that nobody talks about. The consequences of a choice don't care about the intention behind it. I signed something I didn't fully read, in a house I'd owned for 31 years, and 17 days later, a stranger's facility had a deposit on a room with my name on it. The cause was quiet. The effect was not. I used to think staying was the safe choice. Keep the peace, keep the family comfortable. Keep yourself small enough to fit inside the life other people designed around you. What I understand now is that staying can be its own kind of disappearing. I had been fading inside that house for 2 years before I found that email on a Wednesday morning, and I hadn't even noticed it happening. That's what happens when you hand over your decisions gradually, in small increments, each one reasonable sounding on its own. Walking away was the most frightening thing I had done since I buried my husband. And also, within about 72 hours, the clearest. That's what I want to pass on, if I can pass on anything at all. Clarity often lives on the other side of fear. Not around it, not before it, through it. I drove north with a tote bag and a credit union account nobody knew about. And by the time I got to Boone, I was already more myself than I'd been in years. Theo didn't rescue me. Carolyn didn't rescue me. Betty with her crossword pages and her coffee didn't rescue me. They were just people who treated me like a person, which turns out to be its own kind of gift when you've been treated like a logistical problem for long enough. The credit there is theirs. What's mine is the decision to show up in front of them. Sylvia is learning. I believe that. Her letter said more than her words did. It said she was willing to look at herself, which is a harder thing than most people ever manage. I'm not waiting for her to finish learning before I live my life, but I'm leaving the door open. That's the difference between leaving and punishing. I didn't leave to make anyone hurt. I left because I finally understood that my life was mine to live, and I was running out of time to live it. 72 isn't the end. It's not even the middle, if you decide it isn't. The only paperwork that matters now is the kind I signed myself for reasons I chose, on a timeline I set. That's what I know. That's all of it.